We are in Walking with Jesus, lesson 54. We're into volume 3 now, so we're making some progress along. And Jesus is touched, and a woman is healed. And we're going to talk about how to help the hurting today. So that's going to be our challenge, stuff like that. So, well, how do you help the hurting? Here's our timeline. You notice it's moved now. We're down here in the third year of Jesus' ministry. We're going to go through a large portion of that through this volume. So, have you ever been around people who were hurting from an accident, a disease, an illness, or maybe an economic tragedy? We could all say, I've been there at one time or another through one of those things. Did you ever want to do something to take away their pain and maybe restore their lives? Isn't that kind of our nature? When the World Trade Center came down, how many of you wanted to go to New York and help clean that, dig people out of there and clean that up? Yeah, we were all affected. When the hurricanes came through here in Florida in 2004, you were probably here. Did you get out and try to see who you could help? Or did you need somebody to come and help you? But there is a side of our human nature that wants to help other people. Do you remember how you ached for their situation and felt so helpless to do anything significant to change the circumstances? We can think of things right now, family members that are going through stuff, or friends, or people in our church that are going through stuff, and we're basically helpless to help them. We're in Matthew chapter 9, verse 1, and then verses 18 to 22. Mark 5, 21 to 34, and Luke 8, verses 40 and 48. Jesus has returned to Capernaum, and almost immediately a synagogue ruler named Jairus comes to Jesus and begs for Jesus to come and heal his 12-year-old daughter who is dying from some unmentioned illness. Now, something interesting happens along the way. Let's see how Jesus is touched. Here is our map, and here is Capernaum right up here. My red dot is not working because I need to update the batteries in my pointer. But you see it right up there at the top. Not that big of an area. I don't know in its heyday how much space the whole town occupied. Probably not a whole lot. Well, be willing to help. Matthew chapter 9, verse 1, 18 to 19, Mark 5, 21 to 24, Luke 8, 40 to 42. Jesus stepped into the boat, and he returned and crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, and came to his own town, and a large crowd gathered around him and welcomed him and while he was by the lake, for they were all expecting him. Now, while he was saying this, one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came there and knelt before him at Jesus' feet. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and he pleaded earnestly with him, "Come to my house, my little daughter is only 12, is dying." Matthew says she's already died. Mark and Luke say she's not dead yet. But evidently, whatever this disease is, it is terminal. "But come and put your hand on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him, and so did his disciples. So Jesus is sensitive to the plea of Jairus. He willingly interrupts whatever he was doing and leaves to go and heal this man's daughter. Jesus was that way. He cared about people. I'm still working on that value and quality in myself, learning to care more about people. Some of us work on that the rest of our lives. It's of little value to care about hurting people and do nothing when there is something you can do. Now, realize that you can't always do everything that everyone needs, and realize that there's some people you cannot help directly. I ache and burn for those Christians in foreign countries who are being ruthlessly murdered because they have no means to protect and defend themselves against the evildoers that are taking their lives. Oh, how I wish they had weapons where they could fight back. A lot of this would not be going on if they were allowed to own guns and protect themselves. But I can't help them. You've seen the pictures of the starving children in many countries, even here in the United States. the National Prayer Breakfast today, the speaker spoke about, or one of the other people there spoke about children here in Lakeland that are underfed and undernourished, and what the schools are doing, what we're doing to help the schools provide meals for these children. But there are some situations you and I, as much as we care, we can't help. We're not young enough, we don't have the income, or we don't have the right skills or resources. Realize that there are some people you just simply will not be able to help because of their unwillingness, your lack of skills or means to help them where they need it the most. However, there are some things that you can do to help some. So the question is, are you willing to be used by God to help others and help those whom He brings your way? And of course, you know, you get your greatest blessing when you know you've helped somebody. Whether they paid you for it or just said thank you, or even if they didn't say thank you, you know you've helped somebody. That's a good feeling. I don't know, you can put a price tag on that. Here's a picture of Capernaum. This building over the structure on the left is the remains of a synagogue about, maybe 100 feet north of where they believe Peter's house was. These are all ruins off to the right here. This is between. Peter's house is just off to the right of this photo. We're looking east across the ruins. These would be other houses next to Peter's house. Kind of like an apartment complex or a condo, you know. You shared a common wall with your neighbor. You better not get too loud of an argument. Of course, I don't know how well sound went through brick or stone walls, but that's what there is left there. And that's a synagogue over on the left. And up there in the background, you see that red dome. That is I don't want to say Catholic, Greek Orthodox church, I believe it is. And that would just about be the eastern boundary of the Capernaum village. Well, don't exclude anyone who needs help. Matthew chapter 9, verses 20 and 21, Mark 5, verses 25 to 29, Luke 8, verses 43 and 44. As Jesus was on the way, a large crowd followed him, pressed around him, almost crushed him. There was a woman there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. How old was that little girl that he was going to cure?
12.
Oh, it's an interesting observation. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, and instead of getting better, she grew worse, but no one could heal her. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, if only I could just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. If you've had anything you've suffered from, you could identify with that. While Jesus was on his way with the apostles to Jairus' house, and they're making their way through the crowd, a woman who has a bleeding condition, we don't know anything more about that than she just had a bleeding condition. It may have been menstrual related, may have been something else. But she's had this for many years. She sees him. She knows enough about Jesus. Now, he's been at it for 2 years now. So this is kind of the end of his year of popularity, entering into his year of oppression, persecution, if you will. So she believes that all I got to do, I don't have to interrupt him from going to this important man's house. All I got to do is just reach out and touch his clothes. And she reaches out and believes that if she could just touch the hem of his garment, she'll be forever healed of her condition. Now, seeing Jesus making his way through the crowd, she positions herself in such a way that she can reach out and touch the lower part of his garment. Maybe with all the people around, he won't notice anything out of the ordinary has happened, and she can be healed without bringing any attention to herself. There are some things that you have in your lives that maybe you just rather other people not know. I kind of find it a little bit interesting. People go to the pharmacy, there's a line here, and it's kind of like a distance here to the counter, and they want you to stay back here so you won't know what kind of prescription that person's buying. I guess I'm not smart enough to know why that's that big of a deal. Where many of us are taking prescriptions for one health condition or another, My wife doesn't. Oh, that's amazing. Her mother never did. That was even more amazing. But most of us have got this condition or that condition. We've gone to the doctor. He says, take this pill to make you feel better. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's another little issue. But, sometimes we just want to kind of keep to ourselves. I don't want you to know that I'm all bummed up or I'm laid up or I got this condition. You might be, oh dear, if you knew about it. So she's kind of like this way. I don't want these people to know that I've got this problem. But I want to be healed from it, and I believe Jesus can heal me. Maybe just a touch will make a difference. She is immediately healed of her garment. Did she sneak up from behind, or was she merely just standing close by waiting for him to pass by? Either way, she simply reaches out and touches him. Now, I get the impression that she must have touched the hem of his garment, which would be down low. So she'd have to be almost on her knees or somewhere where she could kind of reach in like this and touch and then straighten up and hopefully leave unnoticed. But not only should we be willing to help people, but we must not exclude anyone whom we have the time and ability to help. Now, sometimes we'll say, well, I'm too busy. Or we'll say, well, yeah, I can help you, but I don't want to. I don't like you or whatever cheap reasons. But we do that. We're human. Not excusing it, just explaining it. But again, there will be someone who needs our help beyond our skills. There are some people, somebody had me come over and look at their printer the other day. It was Ron. And I've solved some printer problems, but I looked at his printer, I said, looks like you need a new printer. You need to either take it to the shop or get a new printer. He said, oh, for this, I'll just go get a new printer. So there's some things that was beyond my level of skills. I've got some computer issues on my computer. I know a few things about computers, but there's some of these things that are just a little bit beyond my circle of knowledge. So I need some help from somebody that knows more about that. Maybe if we look for ways to help what we can and look for resource people, I can't help you, but here's somebody who can. And we can refer them to someone. Maybe all some of them need is just a hug or a touch. Sometimes that's all they really need is somebody to talk to. Go to the nursing home and talk to some of the people there that their children never come by to see them. And all they need is somebody that would take the time to come and sit and talk with them. My dad, back in Texas, after Mom and Dad retired to New Braunfels, he would go to the nursing home and he'd get the people and they'd just sit around and talk. And he'd just engage them in conversation. Tell me some stories from your past. Tell me some stories from your past. And it just got the people to know that somebody cares. Our church on Sunday afternoons goes across the street to Grace Manor. Jane, she's over there, and we have church service. And Jane almost always makes it, almost every week, unless she's sick, and a number of other people. And for some of those people, that's the only contact with somebody on the outside that they get. We don't know who, but we're there to love on them, and they appreciate it. They appreciate us bringing a gospel message and singing some good old songs that they love and know. And it's a way of reaching out and touching someone where they're hurting and where they care. We'll also proclaim God's power. Matthew chapter 9, verse 22, Mark 5, 30 to 34, and Luke 8, verses 40 to 45. Jesus at once realized the power had gone out from him, and he turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched me? Who touched my clothes?" And when they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, there are people crowding against you." His disciples added, "And you asked who touched me?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. But in verse 46, Luke says, Jesus said, "Someone who touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." And the woman, knowing what had happened and seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet, trembling in fear. In the presence of all the people, she told the whole truth, how she had been touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Oh, I love it when Jesus does a miracle. He said to her, "Take heart, daughter. your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. And Matthew concludes by saying the woman was healed from that moment. So was this shopping day in a downtown bazaar, or was this a throng that wants to see Jesus and hear him preach? It doesn't really make a difference. Regardless, while they're making their way through the masses, Jesus realized that somebody has touched him. And this was not just your, oh, I bumped into you, excuse me, I jostled you as I was walking by. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. This was somebody deliberately reached out and touched him, and he knew that a healing power had gone out to touch this person. And he has a reason for wanting to inquire who this person might be. So he stops to inquire about it. Now Jesus inquires as to who was responsible for touching him. This woman's conscience brings her forward, and she confesses she was hoping to be healed if she could just get close enough to touch the hem of his garment. She felt so ashamed of her condition that it wasn't as important as other people. Have you ever felt that way? I've got this situation, but it's not as important as those other people, and I don't want to trouble you with it. That she didn't want to interrupt somebody as important as Jesus. I mean, Jesus is a great teacher, a great miracle worker. Some people even believe he's the Son of God, the Messiah that they've been looking for. And so for me I'm just a widow woman. Widow women just weren't that significant, Ruth. They're just like, yeah, so what? You're on your own. Hope you got kids to take care of you, because I'm not taking care of you. That was the way widow women were treated. They didn't have Social Security or all these other things that we have to help out widows today. And she didn't want to draw attention to herself. At the same time, she desperately wanted to be healed and believed that touching Jesus' garment would be sufficient to accomplish that task. Now, Jesus doesn't rebuke her or ridicule or reject her, but he simply says that your faith has made you, brought about your healing. There was nothing wrong with what she had done. It wasn't that she had reached out and touched him or been sneaky about it. There's no problem with that. Okay, that's fine. But it's because you believed in her case. Now, we look back at the guy that they let down through the roof. Remember that guy? It wasn't his faith that healed him. It was the faith of his 4 friends that brought his healing. And we'll encounter some situations where it's the faith of the person being healed, but there are some situations where that person maybe did not have faith at first, but they believed in Jesus after they were healed. And I'm sure if Jesus had healed you of something major in your life, you'd believe in him too, especially if you knew he was the one that did it. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Jesus wanted the healing to be made public so God would be glorified. That's important, that we recognize when God has done something amongst us and we give him the glory. You may not feel adequate or deserving, but Jesus cares about you as much as he does about that centurion, about that synagogue leader, about that chief priest, about that other thief on the cross. Jesus cares about you just as much as anyone and everyone else. You are important to God and to God's kingdom. Now, Jesus has the power to accomplish what is yet happening regarding Jairus' daughter. He's just had power to go out to heal this woman, but he's got an ample supply. Now, there were times when Jesus kind of got a little weary from being with the crowd and talking to them and healing them. He had to get apart and rest himself. His human side got human. I need to eat, I need to rest, I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll do it again. But he had plenty of power to heal any and as many as needed to. He also has the power to heal you of the sickness, of disease, and sin in your life. And of course, that's what we celebrate the most. Jesus has healed me from the disease and the sickness of my sin. And that gives me something that all this other physical healing can't give me. It gives me eternal life. I kind of like that idea. Well, our conclusion is this. Jesus doesn't allow interruption to upset him, but he will confront the interruption and use it to bring glory to God. And we should look for opportunities to give glory to God for what is happening in our lives and in the lives around us. And we might just remember too that you're hurting, people around you are hurting. Everybody's hurting for one thing or another. Some people's hurts are major, some people's hurts are relatively minor. Some people are focused on their hurts, regardless of whether they're major or minor. Some people just kind of, okay, life goes on. I'm hurting, so what? No big deal. So everybody treats it in a different way. But God has given you ways to help others, and God has brought other people into your life that can help you. And that's a lot of what life is about. Well, next week, we're going to have a situation, we're leaving the situation on a cliffhanger. That means we still have to finish the story about Jairus' daughter next week. Jesus is going to finish what he started and startle a bunch of skeptics. Well, that'd be interesting. Well, let's stop here and let's have some discussion questions.